Órbita Sonora Studios.
So what led me to become a sound engineer? Well, I had a massive interest in music from a young age, and I'd always wanted to be a footballer and follow in my dad's footsteps, but that wasn't really going as planned. So music was my other passion, and once the football was kind of finished with, then music took over. Lucky enough to grow up in a town that had the world famous Rockfield Studios in this small town where I grew up. And through some contacts, I ended up getting an interview and starting there at the age of 16. So literally finished school on the Friday and started there on the Monday at the age of 16. So my musical career. So I've had a long career already. I'm still very young, obviously, as you can tell. But 30 years now I've been in the recording industry. And it's been varied, it's been crazy, it's been fulfilling, it's been hard work. I think one of the main things is you have to work hard to survive in this industry. But I've been lucky enough to work in famous studios all over the world, work with lots of famous artists during that time. But I guess you could put it down to that opportunity that I had as a youngster, just to start in a place like Rockfield, to start your musical journey somewhere like that, which has the best producers, engineers, artists coming through the doors on a daily basis. I was in, and I started at the beginning of Britpop, so I was just very fortunate to start in the right place at the right time, and then that gave me a very long and varied career in the industry. Where do I start? My anecdotes at Rockfield Studios, there's so many, but I guess one of the most memorable for me was the playback of What's the Story Morning Glory by Oasis. The night that we all stood there and listened to the album back for the first time, we all just knew that it was going to be a massive moment in British music history, and to be part of that and standing there and hearing it for the first time in its completed form was an amazing experience. What's the best thing and the worst thing about being a sound engineer? Well, the best thing, I guess, is having these musical ideas in your head and being able to get them recorded. Whereas a lot of musicians I work with are frustrated. They've got these ideas and they don't know how to get that recorded into the finished product. So they need people like ourselves and studios like this. So being able to just do that and translate the ideas in your head very quickly to the recordings is a great thing. And getting to work with lots of different artists and producers, and also getting to work with lots of different artists and producers is also the worst thing, depending on who it is. So yeah, the worst thing is the hours that an engineer puts in behind the scenes, all the stuff the bands don't see, the hours and hours of editing, and keeping the whole thing going and the flow going. That's one of the most difficult parts. So the skills I've acquired during my time as an engineer producer are wide-ranging, really. Obviously there's the musical skills that I've picked up off of everybody, the technical skills from working with fantastic engineers. But I suppose the ones that you can't really teach you are the kind of people skills and learning how to work with different artists. Obviously different artists have different personalities, different egos, different ways they do things. So I think being adaptable to lots of different situations and scenarios is one of the best things that I've learned over my time, and how to deal with different people and different situations. If I could pick one band to record, I guess it would be, if we're talking about in the history of music, then I guess it would have been the Beatles. I'd have loved to have been there making some of those records with those guys. Also would have liked to have been part of that kind of 80s, kind of late 80s rock scene and stuff, seeing those massive productions, your kind of Guns N' Roses, your Bon Jovi, the AC/DC records of that time, to be involved in those productions, and I get to speak to people who were involved in those productions, doing Aerosmith records and things like that. I'd have loved to have been involved in those big sounding rock records. And going with an artist that's still around now today, if there's one artist that I could work with, if you said to me there's only one artist you could work with, it would be Thunder, just because they're amazing musicians, the sessions are easy, they're nicest people, we have such a laugh, everything about it is just perfect. So, you know, for a lot, that's not taking a band that's my favourite band or anything like that, but if I could only pick one band to work for the rest of my career, it'd be them, it'd be Thunder. Do I sing in the shower? The answer is no. There's enough music in my house to last a million households. So I try and pick moments where I try and switch off from music, because I'm in the studio doing music all the time. I come home, I got 3 kids who are singing. My wife's a vocal coach, she's also a choreographer, so I end up with videos on the TV, music coming from the bedrooms, music coming from the studio. My daughter goes downstairs, she's only 12, she's on the computer, she's recording. So those moments where I'm in the shower and little moments to myself, I try and switch off, maybe listen to kind of sport radio or something like that. But so no, I try not to. I try and, in the shower, I'm more getting ready for my day, thinking about what am I going to be doing today, what's the plan for today, rather than listening to music. That comes afterwards. What qualities should a singer have? That's a tough question, really, because you'd like to say they should have the confidence and the kind of a bit of kind of swagger about them, really, to put in those big performances. But sometimes actually it's the people I've worked with who haven't maybe got that you get better performances out of. I think the biggest thing I try and get from a singer is to connect with the audience. You don't necessarily have to be the best singer in the world, but if you can take some lyrics and connect with your audience, you don't have to be the best singer to do that. If you can have a connection between the instruments, the vocal, the lyric, and the audience pick up on that, then that's the biggest kind of attribute you can have, really. It's not just singing words, you need to mean it, you need to have that connection with the lyric and get that across to the audience. What's the biggest mess I've ever found myself in? Well, there's personal ones, and there's kind of in my musical life. Maybe I'll avoid the personal ones, but I guess there's certain sessions, you know, that I was kind of told maybe don't get involved, don't work with this producer, don't work with that band, it's going to be a headache. And obviously I ignored that advice and just steamed straight in there and did it anyway. And probably, yeah, there's certain sessions, and we're not going to name the sessions, but yeah, I guess there's times when I've been, you know, on a session and it's gone on for a very long time and it's been very difficult, and you end up kind of in lots of kind of dark places during that. But there's scrapes I've got myself into in particularly in America, while recording in studios over there, coming out, getting mixed up in some gang violence, those kind of things, so situations you really don't want to end up in. But yeah, all through music, your journey takes you to these places, sometimes not so great. What's the biggest advice, or the best advice I've ever been given? Lots along the way when I was a kid, obviously working with those great producers coming through Rockfield. As a young kid, producers would tell me, you know, this is what produce like, this is how you should do it, this is how you should set up, this is how it should be. So I guess I had lots of advice from various producers, but the I guess Simon Dawson, who was a mentor of mine as a kid, would tell me just to go with your instincts. Always just go with your instincts and trust yourself. So that's always stuck with me throughout my career. Okay, the best advice I could give to someone starting out in the industry as an engineer is the same as what I was told, really. Just you know, try and have an identity. So trust yourself, trust your instincts, and try and have an identity and character about the way that you do things. And also listen to other engineers who've kind of been there and done it. You can pick up things off YouTube or from watching things and reading things, but I think to get involved and kind of shadow a top engineer and put yourself in the actual live situations of making records with engineers, I'd say get stuck in a studio working with an engineer. So a normal day for me, if I'm in Spain, is getting up in the mornings, taking my dogs up the mountain, going for a long walk, clearing the head, getting ready for the day's work. Then I'll be in the studio kind of 10 a.m. Maybe do my emails and kind of any business things, get that out of the way. Otherwise that's kind of just going round and round your head all day when you're trying to be creative. So I get that out of the way. And then I start on the mixing and editing, and that'll go through till whenever. I'm usually in the studio till midnight, 1 in the morning most days. That's the same if I'm in Rockfield or my studio or anywhere like that. Generally 10 o'clock I'm in there starting to edit, get things ready for the band. Don't really tend to take many breaks, probably should take more, but yeah, I'm in the studio. I'm usually first in and last to leave. So my role models, I had, as a kid, my role models were footballers actually, and a couple of rock stars, but mainly footballers. I mean, we can all say Messi now, right? So it's just looking at what someone like that's achieved and the perseverance that he's had to do what he's just done. But my role models, there's certain producers, like I love the stuff that Rick Rubin does. As I mentioned before, Simon Dawson was always a role model to me, a fantastic engineer, and he just took the time out to teach me as a young kid when he didn't need to do that. Unfortunately, he's left the industry, but everything that he kind of told me has always stuck in my head, so he's always been a role model to me. So yeah, I guess Simon was the kind of one of the biggest influences because he was there right from the start and got me really excited and passionate about the industry. Do I collect vinyl? Yes, I do collect vinyl. I have quite a large collection. I've been collecting them since I was about 8 years old. My parents actually used to have lots of vinyls knocking about, but it was cassettes when I was a kid, so they had lots of cassettes in the house, but I was always more taken with the vinyls. And my favourite, it changes all the time. There's lots of different ones. I guess some that I constantly go back to are the Bandwagon S by Teenage Fan Club, Grand Prix Teenage Fan Club. Love the first 2 Black Crowes records. They're on constantly on my vinyls. And definitely Maybe. And if I was to pick one more that I couldn't do without, it would be the Stone Roses' first album. So my creative process when producing, it varies so much depending on who I'm working with, and I work with a lot of the same people. I've got a lot of repeat clients, so it's quite natural, and I get into quite a flow with them because it's easy because we've worked together a long time. But the kind of production starts way before we even enter the studio, putting the whole thing together, and kind of building a picture of what the album's going to be very early on before we've even got into the studio. And I'll be heavily involved in discussions with the artists about that. And then it's basically time management. I'll have an idea in my head, or we'll map it out because we tend to make lots of notes about what points we should be at based on the budget and the time we've got. So it's about getting a balance between the creative flow and keeping that going and getting the best out of the artist, but also you've got to be mindful of your time frames and your budgets and delivering the record on time and on budget. So I think that's just comes with lots of experience and managing the session, so both creatively and kind of from a business aspect, and kind of combining the two and making sure you're getting the best from both worlds. So I'm on top of that. Very early on, we kind of have a plan and we kind of try and stick to it. Obviously things change in the studio all the time and you have to be able to deal with those situations, but there's times when you need to just get out of the studio and go to the pub because it's just not happening and the band just needs to get away, and there's times when you just need to keep going and keep going. It's knowing when to do those things, I think, is really important. So balancing your personal life with your professional life is very difficult. I'd say it's one of the hardest things. When you're younger, it doesn't matter so much because you don't have partners, kids, mortgages, things like that. So you just kind of go off, have fun, and enjoy it. Maybe you miss your family. I mean, I guess you sacrifice a lot of like birthdays, Christmases, those kind of weddings. You know, you can't make those things. You sacrifice a lot of that. Then you get older and you've got like family and stuff. You have to try and find a balance. Luckily, I have a very understanding wife. Katie was also in the music business, so she kind of knows what's involved. And when we got together, she knew that that was the situation. So she's been amazing. And I think having understanding partners, having understanding kids, they kind of, I mean, they've known nothing else since they obviously were born. I've been away for kind of like half their lives. So you just have to get a good balance and make sure that when you're not doing music, you step away and you have plenty of family time and quality family time. Although they're all, as I said, they're all into music, so it's constantly music, music, music. So it's spending time doing music with my kids as well, when probably what I want to do is just relax and not listen to any music. I come home and it's doing music with the kids as well. But I think it's the hardest thing about being in the music business for me, is balancing the personal life and the business life. So my view on analog hardware and digital software is that there's a place for both. I love working with both. I grew up in a purely analog studio, so I come from a time where it was only analog. I didn't really know how digital kind of functioned. I was taught purely on analog, and that's kind of carried me forward in my career, that I have a really good kind of knowledge of both kind of worlds. Digital came in kind of 10 years into my career. So I really had a good understanding of analog recording before I went into the digital domain. I think there's, you know, the tools we have now to make records are amazing. People can do so much of it themselves, and there's a lot of records would never get made without the aid of digital kind of software and techniques. So it's been a massive help, but for me it's also been a massive hindrance. I think things get over edited, over analyzed. Maybe performance suffers a little bit now for over editing. For me, I still like to record as if I'm in an analog situation. It's an artist through an analog desk with microphones going through a desk and a tape machine. That's what I like to see my kind of DAW as, is kind of my, is always keep it as simply and like in the analog process for me. So I've heard of immersive sound. It's something that I've been looking into and experienced. I think it's great. I mean, it's, you know, mind-blowing as well, and it's great, and it has a place kind of in the industry. Will it kind of become the norm? I'm not so sure. Sometimes those things are a bit niche and kind of just have a place for a certain few. I think there's just the way we listen to music is kind of here to stay for a lot longer yet, but I definitely think there's a place for it, and it's, you know, it's incredible. So yeah, I'd like to do be more involved in kind of those techniques really. I think there's a place for it, but do I think it's going to become the norm? I'm not so sure. So my impression of Orbiter Sonora was it's very good from the first time I walked through the doors really. I mean, when I go to studios, I look for lots of different things. And there's lots of studios that have amazing equipment, which Orbiter Sonora has amazing equipment. It has the microphones you want, it has the outboard you want, it has the monitoring you want, the rooms sound great, everything about it is great. But for me, it's more than that. It's what does the studio do for you, like when you walk in, what impressions you get, and that's to do with you can't really design that or buy that. It's just, that's down to the environment and the people. And fortunately here we have amazing people. And the environment, the fact that it's kind of in the countryside and it's different to your kind of city studios. I prefer that. Obviously growing up in a studio like Rockfield, which is in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of private. You can just shut everything else off. and be creative. And I noticed that first summer I came here, it's kind of my environment, somewhere I feel comfortable, and the people. So it's the people and the environment that make the studio. The rest, everyone can buy that stuff, but they can't create the rest of it. Fortunately, here at Orbiter, they have the whole package. They have everything. So I'll be aiming to bring lots of my artists here that I'm working with. We'll have Max from the Kooks here next year, coming with me to do a couple of albums here. And yeah, we're doing lots of productions here. We're all predominantly as a producer, engineer, doing mixing and mastering as well, but we'll be looking at running masterclasses out of the studio as well. So in terms of what they have here at Orbiter Sonora, it's an amazing array of microphone equipment. I mean, we have things like the Shadow Hills here, which are just amazing tools for what we do. And having all this great stuff here, I mean, it's like if you made a Christmas list of what you wanted to wake up to on Christmas morning, it's all here. It's everything. It's all my favorite things, the 1176s, the distresses, the Neve Pre's, the APIs. It's just amazing tools. I mean, it's everything you want. They've got everything. And it's ergonomically, it's laid out really well. And then you've got fantastic monitoring here as well. So the whole studio runs seamlessly. Your workflow here is really easy. It's just how you'd want it. If you was to do it yourself, it's just how you want it.
Órbita sonora.